The Vampire King's bite killed women for centuries, until the Silent Librarian survived. For centuries, the Vampire King's bite had meant only one thing for human women: death. No mercy. No transformation. No miracle. Every woman who had felt his fangs had died screaming, until the night a Silent Librarian walked into his private chambers holding an overdue book. Isay had learned long ago that silence kept her safe. Not the peaceful kind of silence, but the kind forced upon her by life itself. Born without a voice in a world that worshipped strength and sound, she had grown up invisible. People spoke over her, around her, through her, as if she were a piece of furniture rather than a living soul. Working nights in the Royal Library of Nocturnia was the only place she felt whole. Books never mocked her. Manuscripts never pitted her. Ancient words trapped in leather and dust never demanded she speak to prove her worth. At 3 a.m, when the palace slept and the moonlight painted the marble floors silver, the library belonged to her. Until one mistake changed everything. The book she carried that night was ancient, forbidden, and dangerously overdue. Its cracked leather binding bore a name that made even high-ranking vampires tremble: Lord Cassian, keeper of restricted knowledge and cousin to the king himself. The note inside the cover was brief and merciless: "Return before the lunar eclipse, or answer directly to the king." Isay's fingers shook as she climbed the spiral staircase toward the restricted wing. She had served faithfully for 2 years, endured whispers, mocking glances, and cruel jokes about her silence. Still, none of that would protect her if the king's laws were broken. She told herself she would leave the book at the door. She told herself she would not go inside. But fear of punishment pushed her forward. The hidden passage she discovered months ago while cataloging forbidden texts was narrow and dark, filled with cobwebs and the smell of old stone. She squeezed through, clutching the book to her chest like armor. When she stepped out, she realized instantly she was no longer in Lord Cassian's study. The room was circular, lined with mirrors draped in black cloth. A massive bed stood at its center, candles burning low. And standing beside it, half-dressed, eyes glowing crimson, was the Vampire King himself. King Draven. The most feared ruler in the immortal world. The candle slipped from Isay's fingers and died against the floor. She froze, unable to scream even if she had wanted to. Her heart hammered so loudly she was sure he could hear it. Draven turned slowly. His surprise lasted only a second before hunger took its place. "You should not be here," he said quietly, his voice dark velvet and smoke. Isay tried to explain with her hands, but his gaze was fixed on her throat. In one heartbeat he was across the room. Cold fingers tangled in her hair. Her head tilted back before she understood what was happening. The pain was instant, sharp, burning, final. This was how every woman died. But death never came. Instead, fire turned warm. Terror became light. Her blood didn't scream, it sang. Draven ripped himself away as if burned. Impossible. Isay collapsed into darkness, the last thing she saw being the Vampire King's face, terrified, hopeful, and broken all at once. When she woke, she was alive. Silk sheets surrounded her. Candlelight flickered. Her throat bore only 2 faint silver marks already healing. Draven stood at the window like a man awaiting judgment. 3 days, he said without turning. You were unconscious for 3 days. Isay touched her neck, confused, terrified, breathing. You should be dead, he whispered. Every woman I have bitten in the last 300 years has died. My bite is cursed. It kills. He finally faced her, and for the first time she saw not a monster, but a man crushed under centuries of guilt. A royal physician examined her in silence. The curse integrated, the doctor said in disbelief. She survived. What? Why her? Draven noticed her hands moving, forming questions. She's using sign language, the doctor explained gently. She's mute, not deaf. Something inside the Vampire King cracked. Can she hear me apologize? He asked hoarsely. Isay met his eyes, fearless despite everything. Her hands moved. Monsters don't apologize. Draven dropped to a chair like a man struck by fate. That night, the most powerful vampire alive asked a silent human girl to teach him how to listen. And for the first time in 3 centuries, the curse began to tremble. The Silent Librarian became the Vampire King's weakness. The palace changed its behavior toward Isay before it ever changed its words. Servants who once ignored her footsteps now bowed. Guards who used to smirk at the mute girl from the library straightened when she passed. Whispers followed her through marble corridors, but they were no longer cruel. They were fearful, curious, confused. Everyone knew one thing. The Vampire King had personally claimed responsibility for her safety. Isa felt it most clearly in the library. The same room where she had once worked unseen now seemed to breathe around her. The dust danced differently in the moonlight. The shelves felt alive with expectation. And every night, without fail, King Draven came. He always announced himself softly, as if afraid sudden noise might shatter something fragile between them. He carried a notebook now, thick with cramped handwriting and awkward sketches of hands forming signs. Learning her language was not symbolic for him. It was penance. Again, he signed slowly, his large fingers clumsy but determined. Trust. Isa corrected his thumb placement gently. Her touch lingered for half a second too long. Draven noticed. He always noticed. Centuries of ruling had trained him to read battlefields, lies, and betrayal. Yet reading kindness in a silent girl was far more disarming than any war. You don't flinch anymore, he signed one night, the movement smoother now. When I get close. Isa hesitated before answering. I still know you're dangerous, she signed carefully. I just know you're trying. The words struck deeper than any blade. Draven had not been trying for a very long time. As the days passed, scholars came and went under strict secrecy. Ancient scrolls were unrolled. Forgotten curses were debated. All roads led back to the same truth. The curse was real, but it was flawed. Magic, Isa learned, could be cruel, but it could also be stupidly literal. The witch who cursed Draven had sworn his bite would kill any woman who gave him her voice. No one had ever questioned the meaning. Until Isa. She doesn't give her voice, one scholar whispered. She communicates without surrendering it. She exists outside the curse's rules, another added. Draven listened, hands clenched, as centuries of guilt threatened to drown him. How many women died because no one thought to question the wording? He asked quietly. No one answered. Isa watched him that night from across the table, seeing the weight he carried settle deeper into his posture. Kings were not meant to bend. Yet here he was, folding inward under the burden of remorse. She moved closer and signed slowly. You didn't know. Draven shook his head. I didn't want to know, he signed back, the admission raw. I accepted the curse because I believed I deserved it. That confession changed everything. Because Isa had lived her entire life being punished for something she never chose. Silence recognized silence. From that night on, their lessons shifted. No longer just words and grammar, but meaning, emotion, warnings. They created signs for hunger, for loss of control, for fear, for stop. Draven obeyed those signs without hesitation. The king who commanded armies now paused at the lift of her hand. It terrified him. It comforted her. But not everyone in the palace approved. Noblewomen whispered poison behind fans. Advisors warned of weakness. Some claimed the human girl was manipulating the king. Others suggested eliminating her quietly, for stability. Isa overheard none of it. But Draven did. And for the first time since his curse began, he responded not with rage, but justice. A noble lord who insulted Isa publicly found himself stripped of title within hours. A servant who mocked her silence was reassigned to the outer mines. A council member who suggested experimentation was exiled before finishing his sentence. Instant karma spread through the palace like wildfire. Respect followed fear. One evening, as Isa shelved medical texts, Draven appeared beside her silently. You changed this place, he signed. She raised an eyebrow. I just work here. You reminded them I am watching, he corrected. And that cruelty will not be tolerated. She studied his face, seeing sincerity instead of arrogance. You didn't protect me because I survived, she signed. You protect me because you see me. The truth landed heavy. Draven realized then that this fragile human, poor, silent, underestimated, had done what centuries of power could not. She had made him want to be better. Yet danger still lurked. The curse was weakened, not broken. Draven's hunger still surged during blood dreams. His control still fractured on nights of war memories and ancient rage. One such night, Isa found him in the gardens, hands shaking, eyes flickering crimson and silver. She didn't run. She lifted her hands. Look at me. He obeyed. Breathe. Anchor. I'm here. The hunger receded. Not because of magic. Because of trust. That night, under moonlit roses, Draven realized the curse had not anticipated one thing. Connection without voice. Love without sound. Power without domination. And somewhere in the darkness beyond the palace walls, ancient magic began to stir, angry at being outwitted. The curse fought back when the king chose the silent girl. The first attack did not come with fire or blood. It came with fear. Isa sensed it before anyone else did. The library had always felt alive to her, books humming softly with forgotten voices, parchment breathing beneath her fingers. But one night the air shifted. The silence grew heavy, unnatural, as if something ancient was listening. She felt watched. When King Draven entered, she saw it immediately. His movements were tense, his eyes darker than usual, the crimson barely restrained. "The curse is reacting," he signed. His hands were steady but his jaw was tight. The magic scholars felt it awaken. Essay's fingers paused over the page. "Awaken how?" "They don't know," he admitted. "Only that something old is angry." The curse had been dormant for centuries, content to isolate the king in guilt and solitude. Essay's survival had disrupted its purpose. Her presence had rewritten rules the magic depended on. Magic, she was learning, did not like losing control. That night, Draven's blood dream came early. Essay found him kneeling in the training hall, marble cracked beneath his hands, breath ragged. The smell of blood was thick, stored reserves shattered against the wall, spilled like wine. He turned toward her, eyes flaring. Every instinct screamed at her to run. She didn't. She raised her hands. "Draven, stop." His body locked in place, muscles trembling like a restrained storm. "You promised," she signed, slower this time. "You said you would listen." The king of vampires closed his eyes. Centuries of violence roared inside him, and then receded. When he finally looked at her again, his eyes were silver. "I almost lost you," he signed hoarsely. Essay's hands trembled. "You didn't." But the palace saw. Whispers turned sharp. Fear returned, uglier than before. Some nobles demanded Isa be removed for the king's safety. Others accused her of controlling him through forbidden magic. The irony was bitter. A mute girl who had spent her life powerless was now being blamed for the weakness of the most powerful being alive. Draven addressed the council himself. "She stays," he said coldly. "Any who speak against her speak against me." "But your hunger," one noble began. "My hunger is my responsibility," Draven snapped. "And she is the reason I still control it." Silence fell. The council understood then. Isa was not his weakness. She was his anchor. That night, Draven brought Isa to the deepest chamber beneath the palace, a place sealed since the curse was cast. At its center lay an altar carved with ancient runes. "Blood magic. Binding magic. This is where Seraphina cursed me," he signed. "Where she died." Isa felt the grief radiating from the stone. "Why bring me here?" "Because the curse is evolving," he answered. "It's trying to close the loophole." The scholars had discovered the truth too late. The curse had begun adapting. It no longer needed her voice. It needed her. "She was a witch," Isa signed carefully. "She loved you." "Yes," Draven replied. "And I betrayed her." Isa looked at him, not the king, not the monster, but the man still punishing himself centuries later. "Then redemption won't come from suffering," she signed. "It will come from choosing differently." Her words struck harder than any accusation. The altar flared. The curse reacted to her presence, sensing defiance. Runes ignited. Shadows twisted. Draven stepped in front of her without hesitation. "No," Isa signed sharply. "Together." The magic surged, testing, probing. Instead of blood, Isa placed her hand over Draven's heart. Instead of screams, she offered calm. The curse faltered. For the first time since its creation, it met resistance rooted not in power, but in compassion. The chamber shook violently, then fell silent. The curse did not break, but it retreated. Exhausted, Draven collapsed to his knees. Isa caught him, her strength surprising even herself. "You are changing me," he signed weakly. "And it terrifies the darkness." She smiled sadly. "Good." Above them, the palace slept, unaware that history had shifted. And far beyond Nocturnia, the remnants of Seraphina's magic watched closely, planning its final move. The curse ended the night the king chose love over blood. The final move of the curse came quietly. No earthquakes. No screaming magic. Just a dream. Isa woke in the middle of the night with her heart racing, the air heavy and cold. The palace felt wrong, too still, as if the world itself was holding its breath. She knew instantly. Draven was in danger. She ran barefoot through the corridors, velvet nightgown clutched in her hands, ignoring guards calling after her. The deeper she went, the colder the air became until frost formed along the walls. She found him in the throne chamber. Or what remained of it. The mirrors lining the walls had shattered, shards floating mid-air as if held by invisible hands. Dark runes burned across the floor, forming a circle of blood-red light. At its center stood Draven. And behind him, something else. Not Seraphina's body but her magic-given shape. A shadow with a woman's voice, echoing from every surface at once. You were meant to be alone, the curse hissed. Immortal. Empty. Punished. Draven's hands were shaking violently. Blood dripped from his fangs. The curse had adapted fully now. It wasn't trying to kill Isa. It was trying to force Draven to. One bite, the voice whispered. Finish what I began. Prove that monsters cannot love. Isa stepped forward. Every instinct screamed at her to stop, but fear had never ruled her life. She raised her hands. Look at me. Draven turned, eyes burning crimson, hunger roaring louder than reason. You promised, she sighed. The curse laughed. He will break, it said confidently. They always do. Draven took one step toward Isa. Then stopped. Slowly, painfully he knelt. I choose her, he said aloud, voice cracking for the first time in centuries. Even if it destroys me. The curse screamed. The runes flared, pulling power from his blood, demanding violence. Isa moved closer, pressing her forehead to his. You are not cursed because you loved, she sighed. You were cursed because someone couldn't forgive. Her hands trembled, but her eyes were steady. I forgive you. The words struck the curse like a blade. Magic fed on hatred. On guilt. On isolation. Forgiveness starved it. The shadow convulsed, shrieking as the runes shattered one by one. Mirrors exploded outward, falling harmlessly to the floor. With a final, furious cry, the curse unraveled, its power dissolving into nothing but cold air and regret. Silence followed. Real silence. Draven collapsed forward, and breathed. For the first time since becoming immortal, he was free. The palace felt it immediately. The oppressive weight lifted. The blood hunger eased. Ancient wards flickered out, no longer needed. The curse was gone. Not because of magic, but because a powerless girl had chosen compassion over fear. In the days that followed, justice spread through Nocturnia. Nobles who had abused servants were stripped of rank. Scholars rewrote laws protecting the vulnerable. Silence was no longer treated as weakness. And Isa? She was offered a crown. She refused it. Instead, she stood beside Draven, not above, not below. A queen not of blood, but of understanding. Their bond was never loud, never dramatic, never spoken, but in the way he always waited for her hands. In the way she trusted him with her stillness. In the way the most feared king in the world softened when she entered the room. The world learned something that night. Power does not come from domination. Monsters are not born, they are created by cruelty. And sometimes the one who saves the king is the girl everyone ignored.